I never imagined that my life would take such a strange turn. But here I am, telling this story with a mix of regret and relief, I guess. It's hard to explain, but I'll try. You see, there was this moment, just one small moment, that changed everything. It started like any other ordinary evening. I was sitting in the kitchen, sipping my tea, the soft hum of the house in the background. The weather outside was gloomy, the kind of rain that makes you want to stay wrapped up in a blanket. But inside I was far from calm. My husband, Tom, had been distant. It wasn't obvious at first. No, it was subtle, like a slow unraveling thread. And for months I had ignored it, pushed it aside and pretended everything was fine. But that night, as I was cleaning the bathroom, I found something. Something I hadn't expected. A small bottle, too small to be anything ordinary. When I picked it up, I froze. It was his lube. But not just any lube, the kind you don't buy for personal use, if you know what I mean. The weight of it hit me harder than anything else. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that I had been living a lie. The anger bubbled up inside me, and I stood there, holding that bottle, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to throw it all away, but another part of me, a darker part, wanted revenge. So I made a decision. A foolish one, maybe. But I thought, what if I gave him a taste of his own medicine? What if I swapped his lube for something a little stickier? And that, my friend, is where the story takes a wild turn. Because when he and his lover tried to use it, they found themselves stuck together. Literally, the firefighters had to pull them apart. I thought I knew everything about Tom. We'd been together for years, long enough to build a life, buy a house, and make all the usual plans. We were supposed to be in this for the long haul. But as I soon realized, you can never really know someone as well as you think you do. I remember when we first met. It wasn't anything dramatic, just a regular party, a bit of small talk, and then bam, something clicked. He had this easy smile, a way of making me feel seen even in a crowd. For a long time, I thought that was all I needed. I thought that smile was all I needed to be happy. The first few years were blissful, really. We moved into a little house on the outskirts of town, not too big but enough for us. The walls felt warm with laughter, with dreams of the future. I could picture us growing old together in that place. Everything was perfect, or so I thought. But somewhere along the way, things started to change. It was subtle at first, like a small crack in a porcelain mug that doesn't show up until the cup is full of tea. His late nights at work became more frequent, and then there were the weekends away, which seemed to come out of nowhere. When he came back, he was distant, like the spark we had was slowly dimming. I kept telling myself it was just a phase. Everyone goes through tough times, right? Maybe work was stressing him out. Maybe he was just tired. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. After all, he was still coming home, still sitting across from me at dinner, still saying all the right things. But it didn't feel the same. His words were empty, his gestures distant. We stopped talking like we used to. It was as if the world outside our little house had gotten too big for the two of us. There were nights I would lie awake, listening to the rain outside, and I could feel the space between us growing wider. It was the silence that did it. It wasn't the loud fights or the accusations. It was quiet. The way he would come in, kiss me on the cheek, and disappear into his office. The way his phone became glued to his hand. The way he started leaving it face down on the table when we ate, like he was hiding something. But what? What could be so important that it needed to be hidden from me? I tried asking him and tried gently nudging, but he always had an answer. "It's work," he'd say. "It's nothing." But it never felt like nothing. It wasn't until one evening when I stumbled across something in the bathroom that the truth finally hit me. I was cleaning up when I found it. A small bottle, his lube. But it wasn't just any lube. This one felt different. This one wasn't meant for us. That's when everything changed. The illusion of the perfect marriage shattered in an instant. I wasn't imagining things. Tom had been lying to me. The moment I found the bottle, I froze. I stood there holding it in my hand, not quite believing what I was seeing. For a second, I wanted to laugh. Maybe it wasn't what I thought it was. Maybe I was just overthinking things. But deep down, I knew. I had known for a while, hadn't I? The signs had been there, the distance, the silence, the way his eyes never quite met mine anymore. But finding the bottle was different. It was like finding the final piece of a puzzle I had been trying to solve for months. My heart sank as I stood there, staring at it. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me. But there was something else too. Something I hadn't expected. It was this strange, empty feeling like a part of me had just been torn away. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront him? Should I ask him directly? My mind raced with questions, each one more painful than the last. How long has this been going on? Was it just a fling? Or was it something more? What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? I set the bottle down on the counter and walked out of the bathroom, my hands shaking. I had to think. I needed time to process this, but I couldn't escape the feeling that the world around me was closing in. Tom was downstairs, probably getting ready to leave for another late-night meeting, and I was standing there, unable to make a single move. He didn't know that I knew, and part of me wanted to keep it that way. I wasn't ready to confront him, not yet. Instead, I chose to bury my anger, to pretend that everything was fine. After all, wasn't that what we did in relationships? We buried things deep down, hoping they would disappear. But as the hours passed, I realized that I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to do something. I couldn't keep living in this lie. I couldn't keep pretending that nothing was wrong when everything inside me felt like it was falling apart. I had been hurt, yes, but there was something else I felt too. There was a kind of power in knowing. The moment I held that bottle in my hand, I felt like I had the upper hand for the first time in months. Maybe it wasn't healthy. Maybe it was childish. But at that moment, it felt like the only thing I could do. The next day, I found myself standing in the bathroom again, staring at the bottle. What if I took matters into my own hands? What if I could make him feel what I was feeling? What if I swapped it out for something else, something sticky, something he wouldn't expect? I wasn't proud of the thought, but it was there lingering in the back of my mind. As I looked at the bottle in my hand, I realized that I had made a decision. I didn't know what would come of it, but I was tired of feeling powerless. I couldn't shake the thought. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like a way for me to take back some control. I wasn't going to just let him get away with it. Maybe it wasn't the most mature or the healthiest thing to do, but at that moment it felt right. The anger inside me needed an outlet, and this was my chance. I went into the kitchen, grabbed the bottle from the bathroom and stood there, my hands shaking slightly as I held it in front of me. I knew this was a petty act of revenge, a childish attempt to make him feel the same way I felt, but I didn't care. He had broken my trust, and this was the only way I could think to get even. I was tired of feeling weak, of feeling like I didn't have a say in what happened in my own life. With a sigh, I walked over to the cupboard where I kept a small tube of glue. It wasn't the strongest glue, but it would do the job. Slowly, I replaced the lube with the glue, making sure it looked exactly the same. The bottle was clear, the contents almost identical, and I knew he wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I set it back in the same spot on the bathroom counter, my heart pounding in my chest. What was I doing? I could feel the uncertainty creep in, but the anger still held me tight. I walked out of the bathroom and back to the living room, where Tom was sitting scrolling through his phone. He didn't even look up when I walked past him. The whole evening passed in this strange silence. I couldn't tell if he knew something was off, or if he was still wrapped up in his own world. The rain kept pouring outside, and I sat there, waiting for him to leave for his meeting. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask him about the bottle and didn't confront him. I just sat there, a quiet storm brewing inside me. Finally, he left. And as the door clicked shut behind him, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Not because I had won anything, but because I had finally done something. It wasn't the right thing, but it was something. I felt a twisted sense of power in that moment, power that had been taken from me over the past few months. That night I waited. I knew the moment would come when he would find out. I didn't know how he would react, but I knew it would happen soon. I was anxious, nervous even, but deep down I couldn't help but feel a little excited. The next day he came home early, and I knew immediately that something was wrong. His face was pale, his expression tight. He didn't say a word when he walked through the door, just dropped his briefcase on the floor. I had no idea how to prepare for what was about to unfold, but I knew it would be something I'd never forget. The next morning was strangely quiet. Tom had left early like he always did, but this time something felt different. I had this odd sense of anticipation in my chest, as if I was waiting for something that I couldn't quite predict. It was only when I heard him come back that afternoon that I finally felt that knot in my stomach tighten. I stayed in the living room pretending to read a book, though my mind was far from it. The clock ticked louder than usual, and the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen seemed to fill the space between us. Then I heard the sound of the door opening. Tom was home. At first, everything seemed normal. He walked in, dropped his things by the door, and gave me a quick nod. There was something in the air, though. A tension like the calm before the storm. I tried to play it cool, but my heart was racing. I didn't know what to expect. How would he react? Would he be angry or embarrassed, or would he try to lie his way out of it? Tom didn't say anything right away. He just stood in the hallway, running his hand through his hair. I could tell he was thinking, probably going over the scene from earlier in his head. He knew something was wrong, but he didn't know what. I could see the confusion in his eyes. He didn't know I knew. Not yet. I watched him for a few moments, waiting for him to make the first move. Finally, he turned to me and gave a forced smile. "Hey," he said, his voice sounding lighter than usual. "How was your day?" I couldn't believe it. After everything, that's what he asked. As if everything was normal. It took every ounce of control not to say something. Not to accuse him right then and there. I wanted to shout, to throw the evidence in his face, but I stayed quiet, allowing the silence to grow. "Fine," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. "Just got some things done around the house. Nothing special." He seemed to buy it. He walked past me, heading to the kitchen to grab a drink, and I was left there, still sitting on the couch, heart racing. What was he thinking? Did he suspect that I knew? Or was he truly clueless about how much I'd figured out? I followed him into the kitchen, trying to act casual, but my mind was spinning. Should I confront him now, or wait for the right moment? Would it even matter? I didn't know what to expect anymore. The person I thought I knew so well was slipping away from me, and I had no idea how to stop it. Tom poured himself a glass of water, taking a slow sip before turning to face me. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy like a weight I couldn't shake off. "So," he began, his voice faltering for just a moment. "You want to talk about anything?" I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I forced it down. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. But how could I start? How could I even begin to put into words all the hurt, the anger, and the betrayal I was feeling? Before I could say anything, Tom spoke again, his words slipping out before he even realized it. "I think something's going on with us, don't you?" I nodded slowly, unable to hide the ache in my voice as I replied, "Yeah, I think you're right." And that was the moment the walls between us started to crumble. Neither of us was ready for what came next. The tension between us hung in the air like a storm that had yet to break. I could see it in Tom's eyes. He was waiting for me to say something, anything. But all I could do was stand there, my thoughts racing. Was this the moment when everything would spill out? Would I finally say the words that had been building up inside me for so long? Instead, I swallowed hard, trying to hold myself together. The truth felt too big, too heavy to say in just one breath. I wasn't sure if I even knew how to say it. I mean, how do you confront the person you love about something so painful? How do you tell them that you know they've been unfaithful when you've built your entire life around them? I looked at Tom. His face was no longer the one I had known for years. There was a flicker of guilt in his eyes, but it wasn't enough to hide the defensiveness creeping in. He had something to hide, and I knew it. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, that gnawing sensation that told me this was not going to be an easy conversation. "I know what's been going on," I finally said, the words slipping out before I had a chance to stop them. Tom froze. His hand, which had been halfway to his mouth, paused in midair. The glass of water trembled in his hand. He set it down quickly like he was afraid of dropping it, but the silence that followed was louder than anything I could have said. For a moment he said nothing. His lips parted as if he were searching for the right words, but they didn't come. His eyes darted away from mine, as if he couldn't bear to face me. He shifted uncomfortably, and I could see the panic starting to creep in. I wanted to believe that he was truly sorry. I wanted him to feel some kind of remorse, but the more I watched him, the more it felt like he was simply afraid of getting caught. "You've been cheating on me," I continued, my voice shaking but steady. "I found the lube. I know what you've been doing." The words hung in the air between us, and for a split second, I felt the world shift beneath my feet. This was it. This was the moment I had been dreading. The moment I'd known was coming but had tried so hard to avoid. Tom took a deep breath, and for the first time since he walked into the house, he finally looked at me. His gaze was apologetic, but it was also guarded, like he was trying to figure out how much I knew. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, his voice strained. It just happened and No, I cut him off, shaking my head. "It didn't just happen. You made a choice, Tom. You made the choice to betray me." There it was. The ugly truth had finally come out, and I could feel the sting of it like a slap to the face. The pain was so sharp, so intense, that I almost didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to break down, to cry, to scream at him. But another part of me was numb, as if I had already cried every tear I had in me. All I could do was stand there, feeling the walls close in around me. Tom's face twisted in guilt, but he didn't speak. I saw the frustration building up in his eyes, but there was something else too. Something that resembled fear. Fear of losing me, I realized. Fear of facing the consequences of what he had done. "I never meant to hurt you," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. I was just confused. I didn't know what I was doing. I stared at him for a long moment, my chest heavy with the weight of his words. He didn't know what he was doing? How could he not know? How could he stand there and say that, after everything we had built together? After everything I had trusted him with? "You knew exactly what you were doing," I said, my voice firm now. "And I can't just pretend like it didn't happen. I can't." And just like that, the tension between us snapped. There was no more pretending, no more silence. The truth was out there, hanging between us, and there was no going back. The silence between us was unbearable. Tom stood there, looking like he didn't know how to react, like he was waiting for me to make the next move. But how could I? What was there to say? The truth was out in the open, but it didn't feel like a relief. It felt like a heavy burden I wasn't sure I could carry. I crossed my arms, trying to hold on to some semblance of control. The anger was still there, bubbling beneath the surface, but there was something else too. A deep, hollow sadness. I had trusted Tom. I had given him my heart, my everything. And in return, he had shattered it into 1,000 pieces. "I don't know what to say," Tom muttered, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry, okay? I don't know what else to say. I made a mistake." A mistake? Was that what he thought this was? A mistake? You don't just make a mistake like that. You don't betray someone you love for months and then call it a mistake. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a conscious choice. A choice that had ripped our entire life apart. I couldn't look at him. Every time I did, I saw the man I thought I knew, the man I had built my life with, and now he seemed like a stranger. A stranger who had betrayed me in the worst way possible. "Don't," I whispered, shaking my head. "Don't give me that 'I made a mistake' excuse. You chose to hurt me, Tom. And now I have to live with that." Tom's face softened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of remorse in his eyes. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough. All the apologies in the world couldn't undo what had already been done. "I was stupid," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I never wanted to. I don't know what happened. It wasn't supposed to go this far." I felt my heart harden as I listened to him. He didn't get it. He didn't understand the damage he had done. He didn't understand that words weren't going to fix this, that nothing would fix it. He couldn't just sweep this under the rug and expect everything to be okay. "No," I said, more firmly this time. "It's not just about a mistake. It's about trust. You've broken my trust, and I don't know if I can ever get it back." He took a step toward me, his eyes pleading. "Please just let me explain. Let me try to fix this." I shook my head, tears welling up in my eyes. "You can't fix this, Tom. Not this. Not after everything you've done." For the first time in a long time, I felt completely alone. The man who was supposed to be my partner, my confidant, the one person I thought I could rely on, was the very person who had betrayed me. How could I go on, knowing that he had chosen someone else over me? How could I ever trust him again? The tears started to fall, and I wiped them away quickly, not wanting him to see how much this was hurting me. But it was too late. I couldn't stop the tears from flowing, couldn't stop the ache that was consuming me. Tom stood there, helpless as I cried. He wanted to fix it, but he couldn't. Not this time. Not after what he had done. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I whispered, barely able to speak through the sobs. "I don't know if I can ever forget what you did." The words hung in the air, and I could feel the weight of them. This was the breaking point, the point where everything shifted. Our relationship, the life we had built together, it was all hanging in the balance, and I wasn't sure it could survive. The days that followed felt like a blur. I went through the motions, but nothing felt real anymore. The house that once felt like a home now felt like a prison. The walls were closing in on me, and I couldn't escape the suffocating weight of everything that had happened. Tom tried. He tried so hard to make things right. He was constantly apologizing, constantly asking for my forgiveness, and telling me how much he regretted what he'd done. But his words felt empty. They were just words, and words didn't fix the damage he had caused. They didn't fix the trust he had shattered. I could see the pain in his eyes, and part of me wanted to believe that he was truly sorry. But the other part of me, the part that had been hurt the most, couldn't let go of the anger. I couldn't forget the betrayal. I couldn't forget how he had looked me in the eyes for months, knowing what he was doing, and still pretended that everything was fine. I spent more time alone trying to make sense of everything. I walked around the house, touching things, trying to remember when things had been different. When had I stopped feeling like his partner and started feeling like his fool? When had the love we shared turned into something so broken that it could never be fixed? The hardest part was that I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know whether I should try to move on, to somehow forgive him and rebuild what we had, or if I should walk away for good. I couldn't make up my mind. The emotional tug-of-war inside me was exhausting. On one hand, I still loved him. On the other hand, I couldn't forget what he had done. Tom kept trying to talk to me, trying to explain himself, trying to make it right. But every time he spoke, I felt more and more disconnected from him. It wasn't his words I was listening to anymore. It was the silence, the broken pieces of our relationship that I couldn't put back together. He wasn't the man I thought he was, and I wasn't sure if I could ever see him that way again. "Please just give me a chance," Tom pleaded one evening, his voice shaky. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I love you. I can't lose you." I looked at him then, really looked at him, and all I saw was a man who had broken everything we had and yet still thought love was enough to fix it. I wanted to scream at him, tell him that love wasn't enough, that love couldn't undo the pain, the lies, and the betrayal. But I stayed silent, my heart heavy with the realization that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't enough for me anymore. I didn't respond to him right away. Instead, I stood there, my mind racing, my heart pounding in my chest. I thought of the life we had built together, the dreams we'd shared, and everything we'd gone through. Was it all worth throwing away for one stupid, selfish mistake? "Maybe we need some space," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe I need time to figure out what I want, what I need." Tom's face fell, and for a moment I thought I saw the fear in his eyes, the fear of losing me. But as much as I wanted to feel sympathy for him, I couldn't. Not yet. Not when I still felt so broken. He didn't argue and didn't say anything else. He just stood there, looking at me like I was slipping through his fingers, and in that moment I realized something. I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive him, but I was starting to realize that I needed to figure out who I was again without him. The space I needed wasn't just physical. It was emotional. I needed to find a way back to myself before I could even think about whether or not I wanted to fight for us. The days turned into weeks, and the space between Tom and me grew wider, though we were still living under the same roof. The silence between us was almost suffocating. I could feel the weight of his gaze on me whenever he thought I wasn't looking. His attempts to fix things, to make it right, grew more desperate, more suffocating. But nothing felt right anymore. I spent most of my time alone, in the quiet corners of our house, searching for peace that I couldn't find. I thought about the person I was before all of this, the person who believed in love, in loyalty, and in building a future with someone. That person seemed like a distant memory now. The truth was, I didn't recognize myself anymore. I didn't know who I was when I wasn't his wife, when I wasn't the one who believed in the story we'd written together. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the slow unraveling of everything I had believed in. The small betrayals over time, the words left unspoken, the hollow promises. It all added up to this, me standing in the middle of my own life, unsure of which direction to take. One evening, after another quiet dinner where we barely exchanged words, I found myself standing in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. My eyes were tired, hollow from the lack of sleep and the endless thoughts spinning in my mind. I didn't know who was looking back at me. The woman who had trusted him, who had loved him, was no longer there. Instead, there was someone I barely recognized. Someone who had been hurt in a way that words could never explain. And that was when I realized I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep pretending that things would get better. That somehow the love we shared would magically heal everything that had been broken. Because the truth was, love couldn't fix this. Love couldn't erase the lies. When Tom came home that night, he found me sitting in the living room, waiting for him. I could see the hope in his eyes, the belief that if he could just find the right words, he could make everything go back to how it was. But I knew better now. I knew that nothing was going to make this okay. I've been thinking. I began, my voice quiet and steady. And I've come to a decision. He paused in the doorway, his body stiffening. I could see the hope flicker in his eyes, but he didn't speak. He just waited. I need to take a step back. I need to find myself again, I said, each word feeling like it was breaking something inside me. I can't be the woman you want me to be right now. Not when I'm still so broken. The room fell silent. Tom didn't say anything for a long while. I could see the shock in his face, the realization hitting him that this was no longer a conversation about fixing things. This was about me, about finding my own peace, my own strength before I could even think about us again. I'm sorry, he said finally, his voice hoarse. I never meant for any of this to happen. Please don't walk away from me. I looked at him, and for the first time in a long time I felt nothing. No anger, no love, just emptiness. He wasn't the man I thought he was, and I wasn't the person I used to be. I'm not walking away, I replied softly. I'm walking toward myself, toward the person I used to be before all of this. With that, I stood up and walked away, leaving Tom standing there alone. It had been weeks since I made the decision to take space, to step away and figure out where I stood in this relationship. In those weeks, I'd done a lot of thinking, and a lot of crying. I had given Tom a chance to prove himself, to show that he could be the man I once believed he was, but nothing had changed. The silence between us continued to grow, and the weight of everything hung over my shoulders, like a thick fog that I couldn't escape. I had spent so much time trying to hold on, trying to save us, but I realized something important during those long nights alone. The relationship wasn't just about him and me anymore. It was about me rediscovering who I was, who I had been before I had lost myself in him, before I had let his lies and betrayal define me. And yet, despite all the clarity I was starting to find, there was still this voice deep inside me that refused to let go of what we once had. A small part of me still longed for the love we had, still missed the man I had married. It was this confusing, painful tug of war inside me. Part of me wanted to walk away, but another part wasn't sure if I could. One night, as I was walking through the house, I saw Tom sitting on the couch, his face buried in his hands. He looked defeated, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. But it wasn't enough to make me change my mind. The sympathy I felt wasn't for the man he was now, it was for the man I thought he had been. He looked up at me when he heard my footsteps. His eyes were red and tired, and there was an expression on his face that I hadn't seen in a long time: vulnerability. It made my heart ache, but I pushed the feeling away. I had been vulnerable once too, and I couldn't let myself fall back into that place again. I've been thinking, Tom said, his voice quiet, almost pleading. I don't want to lose you. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I can't just let you walk away without trying everything. There was a desperation in his voice, but also a certain finality. I knew he was at a breaking point. I had pushed him to the edge, and now it was his turn to make a decision. But even in that moment, when it felt like everything could be decided, I still wasn't sure what to do. I stood there, feeling the weight of his words, but also feeling the weight of everything that had happened. I couldn't ignore the fact that I still loved him, maybe not in the same way as before, but I still cared. It was hard not to, but at the same time I couldn't forget what he had done. I couldn't forget the pain that lingered. Even when he was right in front of me, I opened my mouth to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. I didn't know what to say anymore. Everything I had planned to say, the questions, the accusations, the demand for answers, had already been said. It was too late for words. The truth was already out there, and we had reached a point where nothing could ever go back to what it had been. Tom's gaze never left mine. He was waiting for me to say something, anything, but I couldn't. There was a suffocating silence between us, and it felt like the entire weight of our relationship was hanging in the balance. I wanted to speak, to tell him how much I had been hurt, how much I wanted to believe that things could go back to normal, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. Instead, I walked past him and sat down at the kitchen table, my hands trembling as I rested them on the surface. The room felt colder than it should have, and the soft sound of the rain tapping against the windows only made the silence louder. It was as if the world outside had slowed down, waiting for the decision that was about to be made inside. Tom stood in the doorway, hesitant to approach, but I could feel his presence in the room, like an invisible weight pressing down on me. He wasn't saying anything anymore, but I could tell he was waiting for me to decide whether we were going to try again or if this was the end. I didn't know what I wanted. Part of me wanted to tell him to leave, to walk out the door and never look back. But another part of me, the part that had loved him so deeply, wanted to find a way to forgive him, to heal the wounds that had been inflicted. "You've already broken my heart, Tom," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can let you do it again." I heard him take a step closer, and for a moment I thought he might say something, but instead he just stood there, his shoulders slumped. There was no defense in him anymore. It was like he had accepted the fact that everything he had taken for granted was slipping away, and he didn't know how to stop it. "I don't know if I can fix this," he said, his voice low and defeated. "But I will try. I swear I will try." The words hung in the air, and I felt a wave of anger flood over me. Try? What did that even mean? How could he expect me to believe that he could just try and make everything better? He had already broken the one thing that had held us together, the trust we had built over years of love and commitment. Now he was asking for another chance, as if that trust could be rebuilt with a few empty words. "I don't want you to try," I replied, my voice cracking with emotion. "I want you to show me. I want you to show me that I can trust you again. But right now, I don't know if I ever will." I could see the hurt in his eyes, the way his face twisted in frustration. But I didn't care. I wasn't going to let him make this about him anymore. It wasn't about what he wanted. It was about what I needed. And right now I needed space. I needed time to figure out if I could ever look at him the same way again. "Maybe we need more time apart," I said, my words heavy with finality. "Maybe I need more time to figure out who I am without you." The silence that followed felt like 1,000 unspoken words. Tom didn't argue. He didn't try to convince me that everything would be okay. He just nodded, and for the first time in a long time, I saw a glimpse of the man I used to know. The man who had once promised me forever, only to break that promise with a single selfish act. I looked at him one last time, searching his eyes for something, anything that could give me the answers I needed. But all I saw was a man who had lost himself, lost me, and lost the love we had shared. And in that moment I realized that sometimes, no matter how much we want to hold on to the past, it's not enough to fix what's been broken. The days that followed were filled with tension, but also a strange sense of quiet. Tom and I existed in the same space, but we were more like strangers passing through one another's lives than a married couple. I spent most of my time in my own head, trying to make sense of everything. My mind was a maze of memories and emotions, and I couldn't find a way out. The love I had once felt for Tom was there, but it was buried beneath layers of hurt and betrayal. Tom tried. He tried so hard, showing up with flowers, sending me texts, leaving little notes around the house. Gestures that should have been romantic but felt empty. I appreciated them in a way. I could see that he was trying, that he was regretting what he had done. But every time I looked at him, I saw the man who had betrayed me, who had shattered the trust we had built together. And it wasn't enough. I would sometimes catch myself remembering the way things used to be. The laughter, the inside jokes, the way we could talk for hours about anything and everything. It felt like another lifetime ago, and the ache in my chest grew every time I thought about it. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the person I was now wasn't the same person who had walked into that relationship with him years ago. I had changed, and maybe, just maybe, that change wasn't a bad thing. There was one evening when Tom came home from work, and I noticed something in his eyes, a desperation that had begun to wear him down. He was tired physically and emotionally, and for a split second I felt a pang of sympathy. But then I reminded myself that I couldn't afford to fall back into the old patterns. I couldn't let him convince me that everything would be okay with just a few apologies and a couple of gestures. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. He had always been the strong, confident one in our relationship, but now he seemed vulnerable, like a man on the edge of losing everything. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. It was hard to look at him and not feel anything. But at the same time, I couldn't let myself get lost in the past again. I needed answers, and I needed to understand if there was a way forward. But as the words formed in my mind, I knew the truth. Even if I wanted to move forward with him, things could never go back to the way they were. I didn't know how to heal and didn't know if I even could. He sat down beside me, his hand hovering over mine for a moment before he slowly pulled it back. He was giving me space, I realized. Space I hadn't asked for, but that he knew I needed. "I know I've ruined everything," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "But I love you. I need you to know that. I'm sorry for everything. I don't know how to fix this." I wanted to say something. I wanted to tell him that his words didn't matter anymore, that it was too late for apologies. But I couldn't. The words were stuck. Because deep down I was still holding on to that tiny flicker of hope. The hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way back to each other. But even as I felt that hope, I knew the road ahead would be long, and the wounds would take much longer to heal than he could ever imagine. The following days felt heavier. There were no dramatic arguments, no yelling or throwing things. It was all quiet. Too quiet. Tom seemed to be walking on eggshells around me, careful not to say the wrong thing, afraid of pushing me further away. I could see the effort he was putting into trying to make things right, but the more he tried, the more I felt like I was slipping away from him. It wasn't that I didn't care. I did, more than I wanted to admit. But the truth was, care wasn't enough anymore. Care didn't fix the broken pieces of us. Care didn't rebuild the trust that had been shattered. And no matter how many apologies he offered, no matter how many gestures he made, I was still left with this feeling that we couldn't go back. We couldn't unknow the truth, and once the truth was out, everything else seemed meaningless. I spent a lot of time thinking about what would be best for me, for my future. I thought about the life I had before Tom, the woman I had been before I had gotten lost in the idea of a perfect relationship. I wasn't that woman anymore. I was different now, and I wasn't sure if the version of me that was left could fit into the version of us that Tom still wanted. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had compromised over the years. How many times had I put aside my own needs, my own desires, just to make him happy? I had become so focused on being the perfect partner that I had lost sight of myself. And now, after everything that had happened, I didn't know if I could find my way back to who. I spent more time on my own, trying to regain the sense of myself that had been lost in all of the chaos. For so long, I had defined myself through my relationship with Tom. I had been his wife, his partner. But now, I had to learn who I was again without that label. It was terrifying, yet strangely liberating. I began to do things for myself. I picked up old hobbies I had forgotten about, like painting and reading, and even started taking long walks alone just to clear my mind. At first, I was unsure, hesitant to dive back into the things that used to bring me joy. It was like I had forgotten how to live without constantly considering someone else's needs. But as the days went on, I started to rediscover a piece of myself I had buried away. I wasn't just a wife. I wasn't just a partner. I was a woman with her own thoughts, desires, and passions. And for the first time in a long time, I started to feel like I was coming back to life. Tom, on the other hand, gave me the space I needed. He didn't push me for answers or try to convince me to forgive him. It was like he understood that I needed to go through this process on my own. And I was grateful for that, because as much as I still loved him, I knew that I couldn't continue if I didn't first find my own footing. There were times when I missed the way things used to be. The easy conversations, the laughter we once shared. I missed the closeness we had, and I wondered if I would ever get that back. But there were also moments when I realized that the person I had been, the person who had been so wrapped up in making everything work, wasn't the person I wanted to be anymore. I needed to be someone who could stand on her own 2 feet, someone who didn't depend on anyone else to feel whole. As I spent more time on my own, I began to understand that forgiveness, if it was ever possible, would take time. It wouldn't be an overnight decision, and it couldn't be rushed. But for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of the future. I wasn't afraid to make the decisions that would shape my life moving forward. Tom and I didn't talk much during those early days. It wasn't out of anger or avoidance, but because we both needed the time apart to process everything. The silence between us was heavy, but not in a bad way. It was a quiet that allowed for reflection. A quiet that let us both think about who we were and what we wanted. As the weeks passed, I found myself starting to rebuild a life that felt more like mine than it ever had before. It wasn't easy and it wasn't a smooth ride. There were days when I felt like I was right back where I started, overwhelmed by the memories of what had happened. But then there were moments of clarity. Small moments but significant ones. Moments where I could feel the strength within myself returning. I started going out more, meeting up with old friends, and reconnecting with the people I had pushed away when I was so consumed by my relationship with Tom. I realized how much I had lost in myself, how much I had sacrificed for the sake of keeping things together. And while I would never regret the love I had given, I began to see that love couldn't exist in a vacuum. It couldn't be the only thing that defined me. Tom still texted me occasionally, checking in and asking how I was doing. His messages were simple and unassuming, and I could sense his restraint. He didn't push me for answers, and that was the one thing that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for us. But I knew it couldn't be forced. The healing had to come from within. I had to heal on my own before I could even begin to consider where we stood. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I found myself thinking about the future. Not just about Tom, but about everything: my career, my goals, the life I had yet to build. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what had gone wrong. I wasn't obsessing over the past. I was thinking about what came next. And that realization, that shift in perspective, was a small but significant moment for me. But as much as I was moving forward, I knew there were still unresolved feelings. I still loved Tom, and there were times when I couldn't deny the pull to be with him again. But love wasn't enough anymore. Love without trust, without honesty, without a solid foundation was a fragile thing. And that was the hardest part, acknowledging that even though I still cared for him deeply, I couldn't just pick up where we left off. I started thinking about forgiveness. What did it really mean to forgive someone? Was it about forgetting what they had done? Or was it about letting go of the anger and the resentment while still acknowledging the pain they caused? It was a concept I had never really understood until now. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing the behavior or pretending it didn't hurt. It was about releasing the grip that the pain had on you. It was about freeing yourself regardless of whether the other person changed. Tom and I eventually started talking again, but this time it was different. It wasn't about fixing things overnight. It wasn't about rushing back into something just because it felt familiar. It was about taking the time to understand each other, to listen, to learn from the mistakes we had both made. But I still wasn't sure if we would ever get back to where we once were. And maybe that was okay. Time has a way of softening things. That's what I began to realize as the weeks turned into months. The hurt didn't disappear, but it wasn't as sharp as it once had been. I had taken the time I needed to heal, and slowly I started to feel more like myself again. I was learning how to be independent, how to live without constantly considering Tom's needs, and how to be at peace with who I was, even if it meant walking alone for a while. Tom and I spoke less frequently, but our conversations, when they did happen, were more meaningful. He respected the space I had asked for, and I could tell that he was working on himself too. But there was still this unspoken distance between us. We had both changed, and the relationship we once had couldn't simply be revived by a few apologies. It needed time, real time, to transform into something new. One evening we sat down to talk again. This time it was different. There was no defensiveness in his voice, no pleading. Just a quiet, honest conversation about what had happened and what we both needed moving forward. We both acknowledged that things would never be the same, but that didn't mean we had to throw away everything we had built. We both recognized that rebuilding trust would take time. It would take patience. And even then, we didn't know what the outcome would be. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," Tom said, his voice calm, steady. "I know I've hurt you, and I know I don't deserve your trust yet. But I want to try if you're willing to." I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in months. I saw the sincerity in his eyes, but I also saw the guilt and the regret. For a moment, I wondered if I could ever forgive him completely. Would I ever be able to look at him the same way? Would I ever be able to trust him again? "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said, my voice quiet. "But I'm willing to try." to see where we can go from here. But it has to be slow, Tom. I need time. I need to rebuild myself first. He nodded, understanding the weight of my words. There were no false promises, no rushing into anything. Just two people who had been through something painful, trying to figure out what came next. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same page. We were both willing to work on ourselves and, if possible, rebuild what had been lost. But even as I agreed to try, there was this nagging doubt that lingered. Could I ever trust him again? Could I ever fully let go of the hurt and the betrayal and move forward without always wondering when it might happen again? I didn't know. I couldn't know. The only thing I knew for sure was that I wasn't ready to give up on myself. I wasn't ready to let my life be defined by the mistakes of the past. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that I didn't have to have all the answers. I didn't have to know how everything would turn out. All I had to do was keep moving forward. As the days went by, I began to feel a shift inside me. The pain that had once consumed me slowly started to loosen its grip. It didn't happen all at once. Healing never does. It was a slow, almost imperceptible change, like the way the seasons shift without you noticing until the first cool breeze hits. But it was happening. I was changing. Tom and I continued our conversations, small and tentative at first, but they became more open and more genuine as time passed. He showed up in ways I hadn't expected, not with grand gestures or desperate apologies, but with consistent actions, something I had never thought I'd see from him. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was a start. The walls I had built around myself began to soften, bit by bit. I started to see Tom in a new light, not as the man who had betrayed me, but as someone who had made a mistake. A person who was trying to make things right, not for me but for himself. And it made me wonder, maybe he was capable of change. Maybe we both were. Still, I was cautious. I didn't want to jump back into something just because it felt familiar. I knew that trust couldn't be rebuilt overnight. The bond we had shared was broken, and no matter how much time passed, it couldn't be restored to what it once was. But there was room for something new, something different. I was starting to realize that perhaps we didn't need to return to what we had been before. Maybe we needed to build something new together, something stronger, more grounded. The hardest part was finding the balance between forgiving him and protecting myself. I couldn't forget what he had done, but I didn't want that to define me or my future. I had to find a way to move forward, to heal, without carrying the weight of his betrayal on my shoulders forever. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing what had happened. It was about letting go of the anger and the pain so that I could move forward. I began to open up to him more, allowing him into the spaces of my heart I had closed off. I wasn't sure if I was ready to fully trust him again, but I could see that he was willing to prove that he deserved it. And that meant something. I don't expect everything to be perfect, I said to him one night, as we sat in the living room, the quiet hum of the world outside filling the silence between us. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to give us a chance. Tom nodded, his eyes soft, his face full of quiet determination. Thank you, he whispered. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll prove to you that I can be the man you deserve. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about forgiving him. It was about forgiving myself, too. I had carried the weight of this pain for so long, but I couldn't move forward until I released it. And while I didn't know what the future held, I knew that I was no longer afraid to take the next step. The days turned into weeks, and we slowly found ourselves adjusting to the new rhythm of our lives. There were no sudden breakthroughs, no dramatic moments of clarity, just small, steady steps forward. Tom and I spent more time together, not in the way we had before, but in a quieter, more thoughtful way. We were learning to communicate differently, to be more honest with each other, not just about the past, but about who we were becoming. The trust was still fragile, like a newly planted seed that needed time to take root and grow. Some days it felt like we were back at square one. But other days, when I looked at him, I saw a glimpse of the man I had fallen in love with. A man who, despite his mistakes, was trying to rebuild himself. I saw that he wasn't just asking for my forgiveness. He was working on proving to himself that he could be better. And that meant something. I too was growing. I wasn't the same person I had been before all of this, and that was okay. I had learned to stand on my own, to be true to myself, and to stop seeking validation in someone else's love. I had learned that healing wasn't a linear process and that it was okay to take it one day at a time. I didn't need to have everything figured out. I just needed to keep moving forward, even when it felt like I was taking small, uncertain steps. There were moments still when the hurt crept back in. A word, a gesture, a memory, and suddenly I was reminded of the betrayal, the heartbreak. But I had learned how to sit with those feelings, to acknowledge them without letting them control me. I was learning that I didn't have to carry the weight of the past with me. I could release it piece by piece as I moved forward. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset together, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that comes from forgetting. It wasn't the kind of peace that comes from pretending everything was okay. It was a peace that came from accepting what had happened, from acknowledging the pain and the growth that had come from it. It was the kind of peace that came from knowing that no matter what happened, I was going to be okay. "I'm sorry for everything," Tom said, his voice soft, his hand resting on mine. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, and I don't expect things to go back to how they were. But I hope someday we can build something new, something stronger." I looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, I saw not just the man who had hurt me, but the man who was willing to change, to make things right. I didn't know if I could fully trust him again, but I was beginning to see that trust didn't have to be all or nothing, could be rebuilt slowly over time. "I don't know what the future holds," I said quietly, "but I'm willing to find out. Together. One step at a time." We sat there in silence, our hands intertwined, watching the sun dip below the horizon. And for the first time, I felt like I was truly moving forward. Not with the man I had once known, but with the man he was becoming, and with the woman I was learning to be. As the days turned into months, I began to see the slow, quiet transformation in both Tom and myself. The healing wasn't easy and it wasn't perfect, but it was real. We weren't the same people we were before the betrayal, but maybe that was a good thing. The love we had shared had been tested, broken, and then pieced back together in ways neither of us had expected. We had both changed, but in many ways that change had made us stronger, more honest, and more aware of the things that truly mattered. I learned that healing wasn't about forgetting. It wasn't about pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. It was about acceptance. Accepting what had happened, accepting the hurt, and accepting that growth often comes from the most painful experiences. I had learned to stand on my own, to find peace within myself, and to stop looking for answers outside of me. And in doing so, I found a new kind of strength. Tom too had changed. He wasn't the same man who had betrayed me, and I wasn't the same woman who had once believed blindly in him. We were both different, but in many ways that was the foundation we needed to build something new. We had learned to communicate better, to understand each other's needs, and to appreciate each other more than we ever had before. We weren't perfect, but we were willing to try. In the end, I realized that the most important thing wasn't whether we would ever return to the way things were. It was about moving forward, about creating something new, something stronger, something more resilient. And whatever the future held, I knew that I would be okay, because I had learned to find my own peace, my own strength, and my own happiness, with or without him. As I reflect on everything that happened, I realize that life doesn't always go the way we plan. Sometimes it takes unexpected turns, and those turns can either break us or shape us into something new. In my case, it was both. I had been broken, yes, by the betrayal, by the trust that had been shattered. But I had also been rebuilt. I wasn't the same woman I was before, and I didn't want to be. I had found a deeper understanding of who I was, and what I truly needed from the people I loved. Tom and I, together or apart, had both learned lessons we would carry with us for the rest of our lives. Trust is fragile, yes, but it's also something that can be rebuilt, slowly and with patience. It takes time, effort, and most importantly, honesty. Without those things, there can be no true healing. And while we may not have returned to the love we once shared, we had created something new. Something that wasn't perfect but was real. And that's all I could have ever asked for. I came to realize that the most important relationship I had to nurture was the one with myself. I had spent so long looking for validation in someone else's love, in someone else's actions, that I had forgotten what it meant to love myself. The journey was not just about forgiving Tom, but about forgiving myself, accepting that I was enough no matter what had happened, and that realization gave me a peace I hadn't known I could have. In the end, I learned that life isn't about avoiding pain or heartache. It's about finding the strength to move forward, no matter how hard it sometimes, The hardest journeys are the ones that lead us back to ourselves. This story is a reminder that no matter how broken we feel, we can always rebuild, learn, and grow from our pain. If you've ever experienced betrayal or loss, know that you're not alone. Healing takes time, and it starts with you. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, no matter where you are in your journey, it's never too late to find peace, to heal, and to start anew. Subscribe for more real-life stories and lessons on healing, love, and the strength we all have within us.